It's also Mental Health Monday, sponsored by LSF Health Systems. And we're talking about eating disorders. You know, anyone could be affected by an eating disorder, and we should understand that it isn't just a disease that only affects overweight people. So let's find out more. Today we have Dr. Christine Caulfield from LSF Health Systems to help us with this and maybe look for signs. So thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So next week is actually Eating Disorders Awareness Week. So before we get into maybe signs and symptoms and that kind of thing, what exactly defines an eating disorder?
Well, an eating disorder is defined by both biological, psychological, genetic, and environmental factors. And it involves an intense desire to be thin, in the case of anorexia nervosa. And there's many factors that contribute to what causes an eating disorder, for example.
That's so interesting. I would have never thought genetics could play a role in this.
Yes.
I think a lot of us just think, teenage years, they're getting bullied or they're seeing their classmates are a little smaller than they are, but you say that this can happen at any age.
Absolutely. It transcends all ages, genders, socioeconomic.
It doesn't discriminate, basically.
It does not discriminate.
The one time we would want discrimination, right? Like, we don't want that at all, but like in a situation like this, we wish we could just be like, nope, I'm not in that category, but it's pretty much fair game for anybody, so you have to be well aware, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But research shows that individuals with larger bodies are at higher risk of developing eating disorders. A lot of times we see the people who are already sick and they are so thin that we're like, oh, there's no way they went from big to thin. They probably always been a little bit thin and then got skinny, like dangerously skinny. But you say that's not the case necessarily.
Exactly. And in fact, about only 6% of individuals that are very thin that go to a doctor, for example, are diagnosed with an eating disorder. It's basically the focus on larger individuals with more body weight. And that's because there's such pressure in our society to be thin. It's something that people that aren't really struggle with. Sometimes they're bullied, discriminated against, etc.
And social media makes it worse, of course.
Worse, absolutely.
Comparing yourself to everybody.
Indeed.
And then out of the two, actually I was surprised by this one, and I guess it makes sense because you're basically like not allowing yourselves to get the nutrients, but anorexia has one of the highest mortality rates among mental illness. I probably would have thought bulimia just because it just seems so violent when you're purging, right? But just not eating at all, I mean, yeah, you're not getting your nutrients. So let's talk about some of the signs we can be looking out for.
Yes, well, with anorexia, as you say, it's intense exercise.
Oh, that too.
That's purging. To really continue to lose that weight. And there's also behaviors with food rituals, cutting food in very small pieces, for example, pushing it around the plate, or avoiding social activities because it involves food.
Okay, good to know. And then family support, of course, is crucial in the recovery process.
Yes, absolutely.
So what advice would you give to those who maybe are seeing those signs, or you already know that you have a loved one that's dealing with this?
Yes, well, no judgment.
Of course.
Please talk with your loved one.
Because it is a mental health illness.
It really is, absolutely. So start by saying you care, you're very concerned, and you want to be supportive. Encourage them to get professional help. Don't enable those behaviors. If you tend to be a critical friend or parent that says, ooh, looks like you've gained a little weight, that oftentimes contributes to that shame and that need to, purge and exercise extensively and not eat. So it's a very complex mental health disorder.
And I'm sure with somebody who is so skinny that it does look dangerous, for someone to say eat a cheeseburger, I'm sure that's very offensive to them, so that probably doesn't help as well. I feel like you hear that phrase a lot. So where can we go for more information on everything, because I know you can help?
Absolutely. So you can always call our Access to Care line at LSF Health Systems, which is 1-877-229-9098, and reach out to us. We will connect you with community resources that can help.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for talking about that with us today.
My pleasure.
And we'll be right back.